Hussein took a closer look and saw that there were holographic images of weapons in the making, which proved that the weapons were all handmade. After reviewing the images, Hussein dialed the number on the web page. Someone answered, but didn't allow video chat. Hussein could only hear his voice. "How can I help you?" the owner asked in a low male voice. "I saw on the forum that you sell weapons. Do you have arrows with higher percentage of Z steel?" Hussein did not expect that the content of Z steel could really reach 1.2%. He'd be happy if it reached 0.8%. "I have 2 arrows made by myself. 1.2% Z steel. 300,000 each," replied the man. "I want one. Where can I check it out?" asked Hussein. "I'll tell you the address." The man gave him an address and hung up. Hussein followed the address to a red light district. Although it was already the middle of the night, the streets were still crowded. Hussein waited for a while at the agreed spot and saw someone waving at him across the street. Hansen warily walked over to him. "You want to buy an arrow?" asked a guy in sunglasses and hoodie. Hussein could only tell he was a middle-aged man. "Yes," Hussein nodded. The man took out a box and placed it in front of Hussein. He opened it up and there was a black steel arrow inside. "Can I test it?" asked Hussein. "Suit yourself," replied the man casually. Hussein took the arrow out and tested its balance. If an arrow wasn't balanced, it didn't matter what material it was made from. Excellent. Hussein found this arrow had better balance than saber arrows. If the bow was strong enough, this arrow would always maintain stability. The man nodded and did not say anything. Hussein pulled out his broadsword and asked the man, "Can I test it with my own weapon?" Without his permission, Hussein didn't dare to test it that way. But technically speaking, if the arrow contained more than 0.7% Z steel, his broadsword wouldn't even leave a mark on it. The man looked at the broadsword in Hussein's hands and again said, "Suit yourself." With his permission, taking the arrow in one hand and the broadsword in the other, Hussein fiercely slashed the broadsword at the arrow. Clang! Hussein checked the arrow and was pleased to see there were no mark on the arrow, while his broadsword was chipped. Although he wasn't sure if the Z steel content reached 1.2%, he knew it was great stuff. "Great stuff. I'll take it." Hansen took out the $300,000 he had brought with him and paid the man. Of course, it was made from the bearing steel of old interstellar warships. Hence the Z steel content is a standard 1.2%. Also, the machine-made weapons are no match for my products. "Let me know if you need something in the future," the man said and disappeared in the back lane. Hussein returned home and tested the arrow more thoroughly. It was truly great, similar to the name brand arrows, and only 1/10 of the price. "I was really lucky to find a true craftsman." Hussein hadn't had high hopes because a lot of sellers of handmade weapons only produced mediocre products. For weapons like arrows that required a lot of skills to make, it was even less likely to find good ones from independent sellers. Hussein was very satisfied with this arrow. Just the tip of the arrow showed incredible craftsmanship, as it must have been manually polished to be so sharp. Hussein had briefly learned weapon making at school, but his work was not the high caliber of this weapon maker. "It is a good arrow, but unfortunately I can only afford one. If I don't hit the target, there won't be a second chance." Hussein checked his bank account and found he had less than $100,000 left. "I wish I could buy something with it tomorrow." Hussein slept for a while and teleported to God's sanctuary early in the morning. In Kinshan's steel armor gang, Bullseye was the smallest team. Few people among civilians were interested in archery. So most Bullseye members had military background and could enter military schools if their scores qualified. When they entered God's sanctuary, they would report with the military force into the shelter they were assigned. Keen Shan's Steel Armor Gang was the military force in Steel Armor Shelter. The Alliance didn't have much power over God's sanctuary, but it still maintained some control. In each shelter, the largest gang typically had military background. Keen Shan led her people to the agreed place, and Son of Heaven's gang was already there. Compared to Steel Armor Gang, Son of Heaven's gang seemed rather unorganized. Luo Tianyang gave Ha Sen, who was in the crowd, a cold stare, and judging by his look, Ha Sen knew their business was not finished. After the two sides joined, Son of Heaven's gang led the way, marching into the mountains. Bullseye's place was at the end of the line, and Ha Sen and Su Shaoqiao were walking behind everyone else. Sen, I think we should each bring a shield, to protect ourselves, Su Shaoqiao said. You're rich. Just buy a suit of Z steel armor, said Ha Sen. Z steel is so heavy and not as portable as beast soul armors. And even primitive beast soul armors are tougher than Z steel armor. Unless the Z steel content exceeds 10%. You know, we could only find weapons with at most 1% Z steel. So beast soul armors are in general much better. Su Xiaoqiao continued to say. How nice if I could have the same beast soul armor as dollars. That's the only sacred blood beast soul armor I've seen in Steel Armor Shelter. I wonder what beast soul it was. From its look, I think it must be a fierce and mighty beast soul, another Bullseye member jumped in. That goes without saying. It must be a from phenomenal sacred blood creature, others agreed. Ha Sen chuckled silently and wondered what they would say had they known the armor was from the weakest creature, Black Beetle.